one.
Touchdown, Stillwater! Touchdown! Look out. Beautiful! That one! Leroux, she scores!
And welcome to another edition of Ponies All Access. I'm Ted Leroux and he's Mike Peden, and we are here for the fall wrap-up edition of Ponies All Access, talking everything Stillwater Ponies, everything red and black this fall. And Mike, we've been spoiled definitely in past years with this, not just the fall season, but the athletics program in general at Stillwater Area High School. Not as successful, I would say, probably as past years this fall, but still a lot of teams making deep section runs.
Deep section runs, just one team making it to the state tournament, and that was girls soccer. They were undone again by penalty kicks to Champlain Park in the quarterfinal round, but still a lot of positives to take from the fall sports season. And like you said, you're spoiled, we were spoiled, Stillwater was spoiled, and graduations being the great equalizer, it's hard to sustain that level of excellence no matter what school you go to, even the late conference schools, as much as we like to talk about their consistency. Sometimes they have ups and downs, so Stillwater, some peaks and valleys, but a lot of younger pieces that we saw this year who could serve as the building blocks, and maybe they'll spoil us again next fall.
Absolutely. And one sport I think that was looking to make another deep state run was volleyball, the team that made it to the state semifinals 1 year ago. This was a team that was, of course, led by Maddie Whittington. A lot of other players around her graduated, so the spotlight definitely shone, I think, on her, and she was awarded with Miss Volleyball of 2019. What an honor. She's getting ready to head to Illinois next year.
I mentioned in the section final, she'll fit right in. She goes from the Tufts Suburban East Conference, where Eastridge is, and some of the top teams they played in the state, like Egan, and she'll be going to the Big Ten Conference, one of the toughest in the country for volleyball. But what an incredible finish to her volleyball career. An amazing honor for Maddie Whittington, getting Miss Volleyball. Picking who's going to win those awards is always tough because we're not on the committees, and as I understand it, it's a mix of team accomplishments, individual accomplishments, and so even though Maddie Whittington didn't have a state tournament trophy like Egan or Lakeville North or Champlain Park in recent years, what she did as an individual, absolutely stunning. And again, she did all this coming back from an ACL, MCL injury that sidelined her for her sophomore season. So she had to put in an outstanding 2 years because she had 1 year less than most of her competitors. I talked to Maddie Whittington about getting the honor at signing day, and she was just as surprised as everyone else was when her name was called.
And Mike, a perfect segue to talk about signing day and everybody that signed this fall. A lot of really good athletes. When you take a look at the list of athletes that signed in the fall, really solid, with Ty Thurston going to Division I at Providence for lacrosse. We talk about Maddie Whittington going to the Big Ten at the University of Illinois. There are a lot of great athletes that you had the chance to talk to at signing day this fall.
13 athletes signed their national letters of intent on signing day. 12 women, 1 man. That's how things roll sometimes, but it says a lot about the growth, the talent, and the depth of Stillwater's women's sports programs. And don't worry, if you follow the men's teams, they'll have their heyday in the years to come. Sometimes things work out that way, but the lone male signee, Ty Thurston, going to Providence. I know.
He's pretty good.
Yes. Well, on the East Coast, a hotbed for lacrosse. And on the girls' side, you've got Grace Lilla heading west to Arizona State. 3 girls lacrosse signees overall, 3 from girls soccer who have signed, including Dara Andringa, who's heading to Wisconsin. Girls basketball will send 2 off to college. Liza Carlin at Marquette, Mary Fulci's headed to Missouri Western. So a lot of talent, a lot of people, a lot of parents and fellow students, fans all came out to have a chance to salute the 13 who signed. I had a chance to speak with most of them, and we'll show you a few highlights. And one last note from signing day, folks like Maddie Whittington, she is graduating early, so she will start training at the start of the calendar year. But for the winter and spring sports signees, we have a lot to look forward to, Ted. So plenty of highlights, plenty of games, and a lot of great talent in the months to come. And speaking of talent, we saw a lot of that on the football team, even if the win total didn't show it. That being said, they did finish with 3 wins on the year, and much like a year ago, Ted, they were in it for a couple of other games. I'd say the biggest one of the season was getting that win over Creighton-Durham Hall on a cold, snowy evening. But even against the likes of Eastridge, they were in it up until the end. So football, even though they were under 500 again, when you look at how they performed and when you look at the younger teams and how well they did, I think brighter times are ahead for the Ponies football program.
They're definitely making their way up the standings after 2-7 seasons and first-round playoff exits. They put another regular season win on the board this year. And like you said, so many close games. It seems like that's a theme, not just in Stillwater, but throughout all of the 31 teams in 6A football. It's close each and every single week. And for Stillwater, you mentioned the Eastridge game. You're right. That was close one-possession game. I look back earlier in the season at White Bear Lake when I believe they had 2nd and goal at the 1-yard line, and the Bears come out with a big goal line stand. And if they go in, score there, it's a tie game. And then they've got all the momentum with 14 straight points at that moment. In that specific game, they played really good against White Bear Lake, played really good against Eastridge. You mentioned the Creighton-Durham Hall game. Of course, everybody's going to be talking about that Mounds View game. That great when they went for 2, risky call, but it paid off on the road against a good Mounds View team. So this is a team that's really up and coming. I think one of my favorite moments of the year, you mentioned the Creighton-Durham Hall game, was when Casey Vensky was not able to play. Freshman quarterback Max Schickenjansky comes in. His first varsity pass ever goes a long distance for a touchdown.
That was the only touchdown of the game.
It was 7. Yep. That's the only touchdown of the game. There were a few extra points scored there later on, but only touchdown of the game right there. What a 7-5. It sounds like a baseball game, but in the end, that was a memorable game, no question about that, and the win over Creighton-Durham Hall. So this is a team that's making progress. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There's still a long way to go. Of course, Casey Vensky is going to be coming back next season. They're going to have to replace 2 receivers. Ty Thurston was a receiver. We talked about him before. Luke Cullen, as well as a senior as well. Senior running back Jake Day will also graduate. So they're going to have to fill those holes. Owen Prom was a key part of that offensive line as well. So they're going to have to fill some holes. Graduation, of course, is a great equalizer. You should get that copyrighted, by the way. I use that all the time now.
I'm sure I'm not the first to say it, and I won't be the last.
But there's a bright future there. You talk about the younger teams, 9th grade JV. They're playing really well right now, winning the majority of the games. I think JV went 6-2 or something. But this is a program that slowly but surely. The thing is, you're going to have close games in 6A football every single week. But it's how do you win those close games? It's who gets over the hump, who makes that play, who converts that 3rd and 4, who makes the 3rd and 4 stop as to who wins that game. Like we said, in the White Bear Lake game, you punch it in, it's a tie game, and that just didn't happen. So, but there's a lot of promise, I think, for this Ponies football team. I think it was huge and a big confidence builder for this team to make that step forward and get that 3rd win this season and improve, because the last couple of years they only won 2 games. So if they can come in, Casey Vensky's a senior and he can sling it. He can throw the football pretty well. He had some really good games this year. If they can get some other talent around him to catch the ball, I think they'll be set for next year.
And across the state in 6A, if Stillwater wants to take any inspiration, some of the perennials, Eden Prairie, Lakeville North, the defending champs were out. Eden Prairie got knocked out, I believe, in the round of 16 in the 6A playoffs. So there is a lot of unpredictability this year especially. So I have to imagine for Stillwater, who felt like they had their opportunities, like, hey, it's not always the same teams that make it in and year out. Next year, we might be able to get in that conversation.
And they had a chance. We mentioned the Eastridge game again, and we talk about that. If they win that game, that close, high-scoring game going down to it, there is a chance that they might have hosted a playoff game around number 1, because now you're 4-4. You just beat Eastridge. Eastridge was above them, at least in the QRF rankings, coming down to it. And if you win that one, possibly a home playoff game, and of course that's a big advantage come the end of the year, but it just didn't happen that way. But they're right there. They're right there. We mentioned Eastridge, we mentioned White Bear Lake. If those two games go the other way, they're 5-3, and they're definitely hosting a playoff game in round number 1. So, but you got to make those plays at the end of the day, and I think coming forward the next couple of years, they'll be able to make those plays. From one football to another, the boys soccer team, Mike, was coming off a state championship, AA boys state championship from 1 year ago, and Jake Smothers' team, well, let's just say they had a lot to replace. A lot of seniors graduated from that team, and that's the beauty of high school sports is you have to continue to adapt as new players come into the program. And this year, I think we knew that the program might not be at that state championship caliber level, but they competed for a lot of the season. They were in a lot of games this season.
As you said, they had some moments. They got a win in Duluth East in that rematch. One of the craziest games I have seen. 3 yellow cards and a red on Duluth East. But against some of the stronger teams, they just ran against a wall. But that being said, a lot of younger pieces, kind of like football and volleyball. So as they return next year, Jake Smothers noted, the Stillwater soccer community has always been a progressive one. They've won 2 state titles in the last several years, so I don't think it'll be long before Stillwater boys soccer returns to the conversation among the Class 2A contenders.
Girls soccer, as we transition here, was a team I think we expected them to get where they got. To the state tournament and win a section championship. Mike Huber's team these last couple of years, and he's done a fantastic job with this girls soccer program. He set the expectation for them to win Section 4 AA championships. And this season, well, we talk about graduation with the boys. Girls had a lot too. Girls had a lot of players. Evie Cohn goes to St. Cloud State. Abby Bajan goes to Minnesota State. There's a lot of players. Howard graduated. There's a lot of players that they lost, but they came in, and they came in with forces. They won that Section 4 championship before going to state.
Yeah, you wouldn't know about all the talent they lost because of who came in to replace them. Lexi Huber doing what she does best, and she'll be a centerpiece on next year's team. Dara Endringa had a fantastic senior season. Marissa Bonilla, she's had an incredible first couple of years. Mike Huber not afraid to put in freshmen and sophomores, putting younger faces on the varsity lineup, and more often than not, they deliver. And we noted Haley Nelson, she took over as keeper for Evie Cohn, did a great job there. And they just ran into that dreaded PK scenario with Champlain Park in the state quarterfinals, and so they weren't able to make a return trip to US Bank Stadium as a result. But that tells me they're right there. When you have to settle it in PKs, you're knocking on the door. And I remember Stillwater, they scored in the second half, and then Champlain Park got a counter within 30 seconds. That's how crazy the sport can go, much like hockey. But Stillwater girls soccer, they'll be a force again, and they get a lot of quality wins. They play a lot of tough opponents, and as you saw with Eden Prairie, I saw with Lakeville North, more often than not, they find a way to make it through, and then they got their vengeance once again on Eastridge. They lost to them in the regular season, beat them in the section final. Those two have a way of meeting up. But for a team that hadn't been to state in some time, they've now won 2 straight section titles. Maybe next year will be the year they get over the hump and can play for a state championship. But they've got a lot coming back, even though they're going to lose a lot again. As you said, Mike Huber, he knows how to develop that program. And with Lexi Huber being one of those leaders, I think they'll do just fine.
Graduation is the common theme here for a lot of these teams that played in the fall. Volleyball was coming off a season where they went to the state semifinals 1 year ago, but lost a lot to graduation, as we said, is a common theme here. And we had Maddie Whittington in the middle, but man, was that schedule tough, playing the likes of North St. Paul, Eastridge twice, and Egan and Moorhead.
It's a tough schedule, and Woodbury came out of nowhere to finish second in the Suburban East, but that's what happens sometimes. Eastridge and Woodbury had a lot more coming back this year. Stillwater had Maddie Whittington. She was the only returning starter from last year's group. And when you have to replace that much on the front lines, it can be tricky. So Maddie Whittington, she had to lead the likes of Sydney DeJarnett, Lauren Rineker, Olivia Foss, and they had their moments as well. As we noted, Stillwater reached the section final a little bit farther than I think most teams expected. They beat a solid Centennial team in that semifinal round to get a rematch with North St. Paul. But you could tell this year in that section rivalry between them and North St. Paul. The Polars had experience on their side, much like Stillwater did a year ago. Next year, there's going to be some questions. Just because Maddie Whittington is gone, that's your Miss Volleyball winner, and that's a great honor for herself and the Ponies. And so now you have to figure out who's going to represent the middle, who's going to be your big hitters on the outside. So the Ponies, the volleyball program, again, they have some questions to answer. I'm confident they can. Bob Fisher's schedule's tough, and Stillwater has some precedent on their side now, winning back-to-back section titles in recent history. So we'll see who steps up, but Sydney DeJarnett, Lauren Rineker had some good moments up front. Maybe those two could be the leaders in that front line for the Ponies. And another team who had a strong showing when it came to postseason competition was the Stillwater swimming and diving team, the girls team that is. The boys will compete in the winter. Ted, what do you have for us?
Well, this is a team that's great every single year. This is a team that consistently raises the bar and just how good they will be. And they improved their team score from 22 points at the state meet from a year ago. So this is a team, a lot of great swimming and diving. Eva Johns finishes 6th in the 100 backstroke. There were Emily Kranz, I believe, placed in the top 20 in the dive. So there was a lot of depth, a lot of top 10 finishes at state for these individual swimmers, and they just continue to raise the bar each and every single year. Another trip to state. Brian Luke still hasn't lost a dual meet on the girls' side since well before we started covering sports in general. I believe it was 2003 or 2004.
Oh, you and I were in high school.
Around then, yeah, we were in high school, not knowing that we would both end up at this fine table. But such a great program, and they continue to raise the bar, as do a lot of these pony teams.
Well, we'll see how long that streak can continue. I know you got to cover one of those dual meets this year, and I understand you became the talk of the town.
Yeah, we'd like to think so. Yeah, it was they rolled out the red carpet for us over there at Stillwater Middle School, the pool where they have these events, and we're looking forward where we broadcasted the meet against Eastridge, and we're going to be covering the Eastridge meet as well on the boys' side as well. I believe January 23rd is the date, so circle your calendars on that one.
And that's a great segue to our winter sports. In fact, girls hockey already underway as we say goodbye to a fall season. Ted, a lot to look forward to with the winter sports teams. We spoke about girls basketball. A lot of folks expect them to make it back to state with everyone coming back. In fact, a couple of folks have said outside of Hopkins, Stillwater has the highest amount of returning players. And boys hockey, I know they're getting ready to go. Boys basketball, they have a tough hill to climb, but we'll see what they can do. Ted, what are you most excited about for the winter season?
Oh, of course, hockey. Mike
you
knows.
Got the cookies ready, right? All the cookies in the cookie jar?
Yeah, we're going to hide them on the top shelf until the new year, just like last year. If you don't know what we're talking about, look on my pinned tweet on Twitter. Anyway, continuing on. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hockey. This is Section 4AA on the girls and the boys. It's, it goes the same every year. And although that might sound boring, it is definitely not. It's White Bear Lake, it's Hill Murray, it's Stillwater. Any combination of those three, both on the girls and boys side, seem to make it down to the state tournament for either one. For the girls, Calla Frank graduates from White Bear Lake. She's playing at Division I Minnesota State right now. I think a lot of people around the section are thankful of that because she shut everybody out in the section tournament last year. The boys, now head coached by Greg Zanin, very interesting team. Noah Tussey, I think he takes over the leadership role. The University of Minnesota commit, a junior. He's finally an upperclassman, but they've got a good amount of guys returning, had a lot of young guys, especially on defense. The big hole they're going to have to fill is in net, as Jesse Brown was a starter the last 2 seasons, so they have some holes to fill there. But it's going to be an exciting hockey year. It always comes down to a great section tournament at the historic Aldrich Arena in Maplewood, so we're going to look forward to it. It's going to be a great year on the ice, I think.
Well, I guess I should put in a plug for the basketball teams, especially girls basketball. They are our most watched team, or they were last season. I don't know where all the ratings or all the viewers come from, but we thank you for watching us. And girls basketball, we mentioned Liza Carlin's coming back. She's going to Marquette. Mary Foltz headed to Missouri Western. And you have some D3 and NAIA signees as well. Grace Cody going the NAIA route. Delaney Wayner going to River Falls. Alexis Pratt can't commit just yet. She's a junior, but she has a massive following. Those yellow shoes of hers, I was told they're worn out, so she's going to wear some new colors this year. But even at a scrimmage I went to where Stillwater played De La Salle and Maranatha, Alexis Pratt, that speed, her defensive peskiness, a lot of fun. We'll see if Stillwater can get past Hopkins. A lot of folks think Hopkins could be the best team ever with Paige Beckers and all of that talent coming back, but it's going to make for a fun season. And don't forget gymnastics. They made it to state and finished second last year. A little bit of a mishap at the state meet, cost them a chance to repeat, but they lost a lot of seniors, much like some of these other teams we spoke of, but you know, they have the tradition, they have the excellence as well. And I spoke with Dusty, who also coaches the girls soccer team, and he told me he feels the gymnastics team has a good chance of defending their section title. We'll see what happens. And well, if they get to host again, I guess you and I will be there. That was, I'd say that was one of the most busy, one of the most intense, but one of the most fun days was doing section gymnastics and then girls basketball on the nightcap. I don't know if we'll have double duty like that again, but that was a lot of fun. So
it was quite the day that day. I don't know if I've ever seen Ricky Michael move so fast in his life, going from gymnastics to basketball and all the stuff that went along with that. But it was a great day, and of course the facilities at Stillwater continue to be used more and more. So that'll wrap things up on our fall wrap-up episode. Stay tuned for the next Ponies All Access and the winter wrap-up coming in March. For Mike Peden, I'm Ted Leroux. We'll see you next time.
Look out.